Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday Agency Accelerator call. We've got some good information to go over today. A lot of the questions that people have been asking in the school community and all of our YouTube comments and things like that. We've got some good information to review today. A lot of it's kind of some basic information, depending on how you want to look at it. But a lot of the people that are joining our accelerator calls are kind of getting started. This will also be useful information for more established agencies as well to just kind of see how, not only how other agencies are succeeding, but also how people are thinking about creating their offers, how to come up with like the right pricing based off of their niche and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I've got another mind map here to share with everyone. We might have gone over this one briefly in the past, but this one will be more kind of in depth today. And then, of course, at the end of the call, we'll go through any questions that you guys might have, or you can put it in the chat, and either myself or Tim will get to it. That being said, I will link a version of this in the school community, as well as link it down below in the YouTube recording of this meeting. All right, so to get started, this is part one of a three-part series, essentially, of how to build your agency's foundation, how to generate traffic and generate new subscribers, and then how to run sales meetings and sales calls and things like that. We've gone over some of the other versions of this in past meetings, like this one, the agency SaaS pipeline. This one that we went over is essentially a version of this part two. So we're here a little bit, but that's okay because trying to understand the traffic generation and distribution side of things is one of the most important things when trying to sell any software, basically. But before you get started creating content, you have to know how to kind of set up the foundation of your agency. And this revolves around things of what you're selling, how you're selling it, the type of offer and niche that you're creating or are going after, and how to position that based off of the types of customers that you might come across, and how to eventually, sell that to them and get them to be a paying subscriber of yours. So I'm going to go through this kind of step by step. And then, like I said, if you guys have any questions throughout this, please let us know in the chat. So one of the things that we always kind of hear is, how do we sell this, or what are we even selling? And it all kind of starts from this concept of wanting to sell AI chatbots or AI agents. And this is a larger conversation regarding kind of any topic and that people are trying to sell, where we're not trying to sell, or let me rephrase this whole concept of features versus benefits. And it's always best to try to sell the benefits of what these AI chatbots are going to do. So yes, the actual fundamental thing that we are selling to these people is an AI chatbot or an AI agent. That might not be the way that a customer or a user perceives the value of that, because they might not even know what an AI chatbot is. We come across this a lot still to this day of people that are familiar-ish with AI, but they haven't had their own AI aha moment or used AI in their own business yet. They've just kind of heard things on the news or seen stuff kind of, like that. So the best way to kind of think about this is to sell the end solution. So how are we going to do that? Well, we can sell the vacation, not the flight. And in this scenario, the AI chatbot is the flight, but the end solution is going to be things like how you can save people time, make more money, qualify more leads, generate new leads, scheduling more meetings, all of these different things. So within the context of with Stammer and creating an AI agency and selling AI agents, one of the things that we always try to push people towards is the most simple version of this service is typically the most successful. Some of the most successful agencies on our platform are doing exactly this. They are basically just creating very simple AI chatbots that go onto a website and helping the end customer or the end business understand that, hey, if you have a lot of customers that are asking questions or trying to find answers to their questions, This can be a solution that then reduces the amount of emails that you get, or support tickets, or meetings that are booked that people would typically ask these questions on that meeting that could be solved with an AI agent on their website, or for that matter, behind their social media, or kind of any on any specific channel. So a lot of the people that we talk to try to overcomplicate or create this super complex version of the system, when in reality, it really just starts at the most basic version, which is how can we generate, how can we answer more questions and generate more leads and meetings and things like that. So beyond just answering questions, obviously we have the ability to have the AI agent ask a user questions and then extract that information, and then that can be used as a new lead generation method. A lot of the people that are running advertising agencies or marketing agencies use this feature quite often, and they're able to not only generate the leads for their customers by running ads, but then create a automation sequence that uses these Stammer agents to then follow up with those leads, ask them questions, and help qualify them based off of their questions and answers. This is a very, very, very common sequence that a lot of people have been finding success with. So it's one of those ones that we always like to mention and kind of double down on. Beyond that, being able to schedule more meetings and appointments. This is something that sales development SDRs, that's been their job essentially for up until AI kind of came on the scene and was able to offer the ability for people to schedule meetings based off of a set of qualifying criteria. And that can be things like, if they're ready to purchase, or what type of business they're running, or, there's a lot of different versions that you could that you could do based off of the questions and the niche that you're targeting. And that kind of brings us to the next kind of stage here, where we start to want to think about how we're going to create an offer within the context of our niche. And so when we talk about niche, we're specifically talking about the type of business that you're going to target. Now, instead of trying to create a solution for everybody and every type of business, we typically like to recommend people to start with one or two different niches. So that way you can figure out how to sell this in the best way. Now, if you're questioning like, what niche do I get started with? What we always recommend is, well, what business or what type of, like, what do you have experience in, like, at all, or what are you familiar with at all? And if you are familiar with any type of specific business or niche, that's typically where you can start, because in most cases, you have a little bit of knowledge about the problems that that business owner might be facing. And a lot of these are going to be very similar to many other businesses. But the idea here is to pick one that is actually going to be something that you have a little bit of background knowledge on, which then, of course, will help you be more successful. So we like to split, in this example here, I like to split it up into kind of the two different options, the save them money option and the make them money option. And of course, you can combine both, but when you're first talking to a client to try to sell them on this solution, it's best to kind of showcase one or the other in this scenario. So for example, if we're talking about our original example and use case of customer support and answering questions, this is directly the save them money option. And this can be done in a lot of different ways, but the example that we have written out here is similar to what I was mentioning a couple minutes ago, where let's say you have a VA that sits online or sits on a support chatbot and is answering questions of customers manually. That can be done 80 to 90% of those questions can be answered by the AI agent. And of course, with Stammer AI, we have live chat handoff. So you can set it up to where, if a customer asks a certain type of question, it could be handed off to that VA still during their working hours, which would then allow them to take over the conversation and resolve that query from that customer. So ideally, instead of that VA sitting online for many, many hours a month, that could be reduced so that way they can have a better and larger impact on the business, rather than just sitting there and answering questions. Now, this can also be done in a way where the VA uses these AI agents internally using something like Master Chat with Stammer AI, which allows them to take in the questions from the user and then figure out a response and then use that response and send that back to the user. We've started to see a lot more people use that specific example and use case where they still want the human to be the frontline support option, but they want to give the power of the AI agent to that support VA. And the reason why this could be done is there could be more complex reasons. And we've started to see this with agencies who are working with different local governments and things where clients and or customers or people in general are coming to websites and these chatbots to basically find answers to questions that could range from anything from, how do I file my taxes to, what is this law about this specific thing? Now, this is definitely outside of the concept of this e-commerce example that we're talking about here, but the correlation is very similar, and you can kind of see the through line through a lot of these different examples. So once we come up with this type of idea of how we're going to save them money, this is a really good way to start to build out your offer. And this is one of the major questions that we get a lot where people are like, how do we price AI agents for a business? Well, if we use this type of example and we've given out and helped people create calculators for themselves in their sales calls that allow them to basically on the call with a potential lead or a customer say, okay, well, how many hours is your VA working per month or per week? How much are you paying them per hour? And that comes up with a general cost for that business of, let's say, $2,800 a month. If the AI agent can help resolve 80% of those support tickets, then in most scenarios, that means that they are going to be saving quite a few dollars per month. So you can then charge them either a flat fee or, in this example, a percentage of what their savings would be. So you're kind of doing like a trade, like, hey, if you pay us 500 bucks a month, we'll save you 2,200 bucks a month. And so that gives them a net savings of, $1,700 in this example. When we talk to business owners like this, they really only care about the bottom line and how this stuff is going to affect their business. And if we can set it up in a way that is very easy for them to understand and the very logical flow of, here's what you're getting and here's the end result. They don't care that it's all done necessarily through, a custom prompt with, a custom knowledge base and an AI agent that's, embedded in a certain way, blah, blah, blah. Like they don't really care anything, about that. They just want to see that, oh, is this going to be an ROI positive investment for my business? And when you lay it out like this is a very easy way for them to understand that. And so these are a couple different examples here, and this is another version of that where you can say, hey, if we can resolve 80% of your queries, then potentially the VA that's responding to emails is reducing their cost because people are no longer writing out emails asking those same questions. And this, again, this might be elementary to a lot of people that are watching this recording or on the meeting today, but it's these basic and simple examples that are crushing for the agencies that are selling them to hundreds, if not thousands of clients. So I want to just kind of, reiterate that is you don't need to create the overly complex, version or example of this. And I know that might be tough to hear, but when Tim and I talk to customers like on a daily basis, a lot of people will come to us or even agencies will come to us saying like, hey, my customer or my client is asking for X, Y, or Z and this complicated integration. And a lot of people still have their heads in the clouds where they think AI can do anything and everything. And yes, while it can do a lot of these different things, when we try to bring them down to earth and show them that, hey, we don't necessarily need all that because your end consumer doesn't really need all that, we can really start to push these simpler examples where we're selling the end solution of saving you time and generating you more money. And that brings me to the second side of this equation, which is the make them money option. So this is more of the sales and lead generation side. And this can also be done on a website as well to not only answer the questions, but then have the AI agent ask the user questions to help qualify them to see if they'd be a good customer. But this can also be done inside of a sales pipeline. And this is where the feedback that we're getting from agencies, this is where they're finding the most success. Where, for example, if you're running a construction or a general contracting company, that is trying to get more business. Let's say you have a plumber or any type of local services, HVAC, any of these types of things. There's going to be a high probability that there are people that are searching locally for their business and finding these websites or even like Google reviews and things like that for a local plumber or local HVAC guy. And if they find that they have a website and then they submit a lead form, which is one of the most common things that local service businesses will have. It says, what's your name, what's your email, what's your phone number, what's going on, what do you need help with? Instead of having the contractor themselves get that information manually on their phone, having the AI agent automatically follow up with that lead the instant that they submit that lead form turns that into a better prospect for the business owner. And I always like to give an example of one of my other business partners, Kyle, who runs a contracting business where he's on the job site quite often. And sometimes he doesn't necessarily see that the lead is opting in, right then and there or within 5, 10, even an hour. And so for him, it's quite useful to have an AI agent go and contact the customer manually or automatically, excuse me, and then ask them the questions that he would have asked them if he was to call them and try to figure out, what they need and when they need it by and what their what their budget might be and all these different types of things. And so this is where we start to kind of leach into the automation sides of things. Typically, when business owners work with contractors and things like that, they want it to work within their existing CRM. And of course, the way that we've built Stammer, we have our white label API that allows you to connect to any third party CRM or system. So that way it can kick off this automation without the need for additional work or software or any of that. So a lot of the examples that we give are kind of within these two different realms of how are we going to save you money and or how are we going to make you money. And within that type of context or those types of options, you can start to apply this to many different niches in how you'd like to start targeting your customers, whether that be e-commerce, local businesses, service-based businesses. One of the examples that we have going with some of our voice solutions that we've been working on is a dentist office, which is doing quite well. But it applies to basically everybody because everyone's interested in trying to learn and see how this stuff can be applied to their business. So there's a lot of more information that I kind of glossed over here, but creating your offer, I think we'll end on this. A lot of the best advice comes from existing information. We're just applying these kind of AI agent stuff, technology to how customers typically purchase things. And so if we again lead with the result, the end solution, the vacation itself, and we introduce our AI agents as the way to achieve that result, and then we tie in things like scarcity and urgency. These are all things that you can kind of put together to help convert your clients so that way they are interested, they know what they're getting, and they can see the value very quickly upon signing up with you. Yeah, so there'll be a link. I'll post this in the school community. We'll put a link to it in Discord as well and link it down below in the YouTube description. Tim, anything that you want to add there? Maybe talk about the dentist office for
No,
a second, or
well,
I know it's
yeah, and that
slightly,
solution,
yeah.
yeah, the dentist office is complex because of HIPAA and HIPAA requirements and stuff. And the only thing I want to really reiterate is that, I mean, you're exactly right based on all our conversations with customers. Most people are seeing success with simple use cases. And you guys have to realize, I mean, it even happens all the time for us here at Stammer, but customers will come to you that simply want something too complex or not realistic. And you have to be brave enough to, kind of let them go, let them know what's possible or what it is that you do and specialize in, and go find the next customer. That's how most agencies are having success. Now, that being said, there is the alternate approach of people we've had that build more complex integrations, and certainly those do work, but you got to keep in mind they're charging a lot more for those. So if you have a customer that comes to you and wants to integrate with some custom CRM or God knows what, that is technically possible, but you're going to need some technical expertise on your team, certainly, in order to realistically get that done. And you've got to charge more for it. So the first thing you need to ask yourself is, does this customer have money? As bad as that sounds, but can they actually pay for what they want? And
Yeah.
relatedly, you don't want the customer to waste your time overall. There are so many customers I've spent 10 years in the enterprise space working with customers doing product management, and so many times they would come to us and say something complex, oh, this would be nice to have. But that's the key, right? They don't really care about it. It's just nice to have. And the way you can find out between the lines if something's nice to have or essential, ask them, okay, you want to do this today. You want this capability, but how are you doing it today? Drill into how are they getting this problem solved today? Is it some manual process that they're assigning people and virtual assistants to, or are they not really caring about it and it's just a nice to have? Because if they're not tackling it in some way today, most likely that's not really a primary driver of getting business done for them. So
Yeah.
always keep that in mind when talking to customers.
Yeah, it might be something that they think is going to have a large impact, but in reality it's just a distraction or a shiny object. And I know we we
Exactly.
we come across that quite often
Too
in our
much.
in our business. Yeah. Yeah. And then for comparison, like these, the examples that we're showing here are, a few $100s, maybe a few $1,000s for implementation and subscription fees. The agencies that are selling these custom solutions are selling for tens of thousands of dollars. Like we have an agency that right now that is doing more custom development work that is charging $17,000 for implementation for these larger clients. And that's still kind of on the low end when we look at enterprise level deals or enterprise offers. So, like Tim said, if you're talking to someone who doesn't make $17,000 in a month, they're obviously not going to be able to afford something, an implementation of that scale. So yes, while it could be nice for them to have, getting them started on something that will reduce their costs, generate more leads into their pipeline, that gets them to the point where they potentially could pay for that type of custom integration or further work, things like that. There,
Absolutely.
yeah, there is a large difference between the agencies that are going like wide in terms of scale versus the ones that are going up and down vertically where they're focused on, larger enterprise deals, which are less, there's less of those customers, but the value and the amount that they're able to charge is significantly more. So yes, I will share a read-only version of the Miro so you can review it. I'll siphon this off and I'll make a new board for you guys so you can look at this. And then yeah, I think just to wrap it up here, unless anybody's got any questions, concerns, don't try to overcomplicate things. Try to keep things as simple as possible and then scale up from there. Good advice and excellent presentation. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate you being here. Cool. Thanks, Lucas. Appreciate you. Alrighty. Well, yeah, I think that'll wrap up today's meeting. Like I said, a recording of this will be on our YouTube in like a day or so, and we'll send out an email to everyone on the list that has a link to this. Hope everyone has a great rest of your week. Let's crush it with these AI agents, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.
Bye bye.